Shall we begin?
Why not? Welcome to Frankie Sense and More. It's like she's got a whole lot of goodness for you with a little bit of sass.
Frankie, did you just say...
She sure did. Not to mention, along with...
Whoops.
Join us now as Frankie Picasso and her new co-host mix it up with authors, musicians, and interviews with world-changing people.
Let's begin now.
Okay, let's begin now, because it only makes sense.
Hello there, and welcome to Frankie Sense and More. I am your host, Frankie Picasso, and today we have a wonderful show. I think I need to address something. I just realized in the intro there, he talks about my co-host. I was supposed to have a rotating co-host for the show, and we started out having a rotating co-host, and then it just got so busy where there's so many people that it kind of just fell by the wayside. And so sometimes I will have a rotating co-host, but no, I don't really need a rotating co-host. But there you go. I'm just rambling now. We have a wonderful show for you. Are you someone who's been waiting for your Prince Charming to arrive? Have you watched your good friends date, get married, and start having kids, but you haven't found the one yet? If it sounds like you, fear not. We have author Stephanie Rische here with us, and I promise you will find hope and inspiration as she shares her story with us today. Also joining us is Marcia Tulloch, co-founder of the Jardine Graham Foundation. And if you are of Black descent, and especially if you're from the Caribbean, Jamaican, you need to hear her message. So, what is good in the news today? Well, Purina is. They've generously come up with a wonderful plan to feed shelter dogs. They will donate up to 500,000 pounds of dog food every time someone watches this video made by Soul Pancake. So please go to www.thegoodradionetwork.com to my blog page and click and watch the video. And then share it, because we want all those little doggies to be fed, have full bellies. Well, Stephanie Rische is here with me today. She's the author of I Was Blind, in quotes, dating, but now I see, a memoir that chronicles her misadventures in dating, waiting, and stumbling into love. Stephanie's a senior editor of nonfiction books at Tyndale House Publishers, as well as a freelance writer for publications such as Today's Christian Woman, Christian Marriage Today, Christian Living Magazine, and she and her husband Daniel now live in the Chicago area. See, she found somebody where they enjoy riding bikes, making homemade ice cream, and swapping bad puns. Stephanie's blog is at www.stephanierische.com, and it's RISCHE.com, and we'll put that out again a little bit later. Now, back to the book. On the back cover of Stephanie's book, it says, "This is how a girl with practically zero dating experience and a shyness around boys that dated back to circa 1987 mustered up the courage to say yes to not one, but 8 blind dates." So how did she do so with all of the elegance of a pit bull in a tutu? What an image that is. Stephanie, welcome.
Hello, Frankie. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Oh, what a fun book.
Thank you.
It really was a lot of fun. And I want to go through, some of the guys that you met and everything. But, you start to read the book, you go, is she a pit bull? What does she look like? And then I saw your picture, and you're absolutely stunning. And I have to wonder, why would guys be like, they look at you and they go, taking that side step. Maybe you're too beautiful. Maybe, you're intimidating. I don't know. What do you think the problem was? I mean, all of your girlfriends were getting married, and you were not.
Yes, and I think that's such a hard thing when we're waiting, no matter what we're waiting for, is we start getting insecure and wondering, is there something wrong with me? And I know I went through that wondering, am I not pretty enough? Am I not fun enough? What is it about me that's putting out a vibe that's not attracting people? And I think that caused a lot of soul searching in me, and ultimately it just came down to God had things to teach me during that season, and I don't necessarily know the reason why God wasn't working on my time frame, but I'm glad that his plan worked out better than mine.
Yeah, well, it usually doesn't go on our time frame. It usually goes, and Daniel wasn't ready yet and all of that good stuff. But, as you come out of high school and as you come out of college, it does get a little more difficult to meet people, especially, your head's down into work, and where do you go? Where do you meet these guys? And so who was the first one to set you up on a blind date? Who came up with that idea?
Yes, it was friend of my mom's, actually, and it is so much harder. I went to a Christian college where there were tons of guys and lots of people in the same life stage and similar values, and then to go into the real world where you just don't have as many common connections and easy ways to get to know people. It was really hard to start meeting people, and there's some awkwardness of dating in the workplace, because if things don't work out, then you still have to see them and you still have to go to your job.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's not a good plan.
Right. And then as a Christian, I didn't want to go to the bars and do that scene, and I know a lot of my friends did the whole online dating thing, but I was way too chicken for that. It worked out for some people, but I was just nervous about that. So it didn't leave a lot of options for how to meet people. And my personal experience was at church, there were so many single women, and there just weren't as many single men to get to know and meet at church. So one of my mom's friends set me up with this guy on the first blind date, and I have to tell you, I'm kind of a chicken little. I'm always afraid the sky is falling, and I was way too nervous to do this, but I thought, okay, what do I have to lose? I'll never see him again if things don't work out. So I told a couple friends, please pray for me. I'm so nervous. Would you please just ask me how it goes afterwards? And that was the first blind date, and I had no way of knowing at the time that there would be 8 more after that.
So when you went on this date, tell us about this date. This was kind of a funny date. One of the girls it was a little girl, I think, and she goes, "You're going on a blonde date." I thought you were going on with a blonde.
That's right. I was mentoring some girls who were in junior high, and this sweet little girl was trying to figure out, now, why would you call it a blonde date? Does that mean he's going to have blonde hair? So we eventually got the definition of what a blind date is. And he did turn out to have blondish colored hair, but that was incidental.
But he was so rude. Oh my gosh, this guy was rude.
Well, one of the things I learned in my blind date experiences is that both parties are not always as interested in going on the blind date. So it's good to find out if the other person was strong-armed into this by the matchmaker or if they really want to be there. But he was late to the date, and I kept wondering, is he coming? Is he standing me up? How long do I wait before I just give up on this, especially since I'd never met him before?
Right,
Yeah, but eventually the person behind the counter it was like a juice place, said, well, are you waiting for blonde date? And she said his name, and I said, yes, I am, and she told me that he had called and said he was running late, so I at least knew he was coming. But it turns out that he was involved in a very intense pickup soccer game, so that's why he was late.
A pickup soccer game that he wasn't playing in.
Yeah, it was. You could tell he was maybe not as excited about this idea as I was.
Oh my gosh! And as you read about these guys, it's like you're looking at these guys going, "You guys are all losers. No wonder you're single." But you, on the other hand, were like, "How come she's single?" But I do have to laugh at you because you had this dry spell where you hadn't gone out for a long time with anybody, but you had all these rules. Somebody asked, I'm still not going to go out for 3 days. I'm like, girl,
well, and I should mention
right now, but you still got your integrity.
Well, and I should mention for the guy's benefit, there probably is some perfect person out there, and even if I wasn't that perfect person, there is somebody out there that's a good match for them.
Right. But so after you went out with Blonde Date, you started to pick up stones. You started to save stones. How did that happen? A stone for each date, a reminder, a token.
Yes. Well, there's a story in Scripture that talks about how Joshua led the people into battle, and as kind of a remembrance of God's faithfulness that he delivered them from their enemies, they put down this big rock right where God won the battle for them, and they called it the Ebenezer stone, and it was a stone to commemorate God's faithfulness, and that every time they would see it, they would remember God was faithful, and he delivered them from their enemies. And so I was thinking about that idea, and I feel like for me, it's so hard to remember God's faithfulness. It seems so intangible. And so I wanted a tangible way to remind myself that God has been faithful in the past and he will be in the future. And so I started collecting little stones. I didn't want to put a big rock in the middle of my yard.
Right.
So with each blind date, I just wrote down in permanent Sharpie on the rock the person's name and the date, just to remind myself, okay, God has been faithful, and whether this date works out or not, I trust that God will be faithful in this too.
Well, I have to commend you because, your faith was rewarded eventually, but it must have been so difficult. I mean, you had a lot of changes going on. You bought your own home, you became, a homeowner, and you learned to live by yourself, and, you were working out in the world now, and your sister got married, and they, younger ones, like you were the eldest of your siblings, and it's difficult when the younger ones get married before you. How hard was that for you to be happy for her?
Yeah, I think we don't even realize how we have these scripts that we write for our lives, and we imagine how things will play out. And as you said, I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and I just imagined that I would be the first to get married and have a family. And it turned out my younger brother got married first, and then my baby sister, who's 8 years younger than I am, she got married before I did. And you just start having to rewrite the script in your head and say, okay, who's in charge here? Am I in charge of my life, or am I going to release my plans to God and trust that he has a better plan than I have? And there was definitely some wrestling. There's that verse that I clung to, rejoice with those who rejoice. And sometimes that has to be a choice, because it doesn't come naturally to rejoice for someone who has something that you want that hasn't happened easily for you. And so it really was a daily choosing of asking God to give me his joy when I didn't have joy of my own.
Well, I commend you you did a lot of things, and I want to talk about all those amazing things that you did do, but we're about to go to a commercial break. So folks, I want you to make sure that you stick around, because we got some very exciting surprises coming up for you later in the show. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Stephanie about date number 2 when we get back. And that gentleman, let me see, what did you nickname? You had a nickname for all of them. Oh, that was the Professor. We're going to talk about the Professor. Don't go away. Stay where you are. We're coming right back at ya.
Heck no. We're just getting warmed up. Frankie Sense and More will be right back after we pay the bills.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us, because we know that quilting changes everything.
Is there a particular food item that you absolutely crave to the point of madness? Then you're an opsomaniac like me. I love avocados, for instance. Probably because avocados have more protein, fat, and calories than any other fruit. Some folks are afraid of the avocado, nicknaming it the alligator pear for slippery and yucky. What's a word for the fear of food? Sitiophobia. Talk about yummy snacks, let's not forget potato chips. A pound of potato chips costs 200 times more than a pound of potatoes, or tater tatties as Aussies call them. The slang word spud derives from the spade-like tool used to dig them out. What's another word for mashed potatoes? Pachi-pachi.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my new app, Too Funny for Words.
And we're back, and I'm your host, Frankie Picasso. My guest today is Stephanie Rische. She's the author of I Was Blind Dating, But Now I See. Stephanie, you're a very principled person. You have a lot of integrity, and you have rules that you set for yourself, and you're very determined to keep to those. And I have to commend you for that, because it's not very easy to do that. And one of the things I meant by that was you had a friend. Is it Macy?
Yes, Mason.
Mason.
Yes.
And you and Mason decided that you were going to pray together and see if you guys could find a man, find someone to fall in love with. Mm-hmm. And you decided that you were going to fast one day a week. Was that what you did? One day a week or one day a month?
Yes, one day a week. Mm-hmm.
And that's being very disciplined.
It doesn't come naturally to me because I have to tell you, I do like to eat a lot. So you look very thin. Well, it was really a good practice for me, though, because every time I had those hunger pains, it reminded me I'm not just doing this to be disciplined, but I'm crying out to God. And there was something about the physicality of that to say, this is my physical craving, but my spiritual craving is even deeper. And not just that I want God to answer this prayer for me, but I want him to change me during this waiting so that I'll become the person he wants me to be and that the waiting won't be wasted. I didn't just want to be on a treadmill just waiting for the good thing to happen. I wanted to become different by the end of the waiting.
And that's a really great thing to be, because part of it is like, I would think, well, how come I have to do all these hard things for a guy when I look at all my friends and they just meet so easily? They didn't have to fast and they didn't have to do this and they didn't have to do that. But really, you were, if you take the law of attraction, you were becoming the woman that, let's say, Daniel needed you to be, and vice versa, in order for that timing to be correct. So
that's true. And even beyond that, if I hadn't gotten married, I still wanted to become the person that God wanted me to be, and I wanted to find out his love for me, whether I got married one day or not.
Right. But he would have loved you fast or not.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about your second date, the professor.
Yes. Well, one thing I learned through these blind dates is that somebody can be perfect on paper, but until you actually meet the person, it's really hard to know if things will click. So the professor, there was nothing wrong with him, but when we were together, it just seemed like he wasn't having a good time and I wasn't having a good time. And when you were talking about the dry spell, you do have this feeling like, well, this is a lot better than anything else I've been experiencing in the dating world, so maybe I should try to make it work. And it was at that point that it was really helpful to have a community of friends around. I had especially a small group and a couple of married friends who would tell me the truth in love. And so I actually had them meet the professor in kind of a group gathering just to get their opinion about, am I missing something?
You weren't
what
trusting
do you think
your
about
own
this guy?
instincts anymore.
Exactly. And so it was good for me to get their opinion after they met him and say, he just doesn't seem like a match for you. And that was really freeing for me to realize I have people who know me well and can tell me the truth about those things.
Well, that's good. You do have a lot of good friends. Man, it's wonderful that you have been able to keep them for so long and so richly in your life. That's a real testament to who you are. It really is.
So grateful.
There's a problem kind of with the matchmaker themselves, because do you owe them anything? Yes, they set you up from the goodness of their hearts, but do you owe them an explanation when things didn't work out, and, who's to blame, and do you have to go there and debrief, or are you okay just to thanks very much and go on?
That was a hard part about having matchmakers and somebody I was getting to know, because I didn't want to disappoint either of them. If the guy liked me, I didn't want to disappoint him if I didn't think it was going to work out. And then I also didn't want to disappoint the matchmaker. So it really was tough to work through that sometimes. But one thing that I kept reminding myself and the matchmakers was just that their setting me up felt like an act of love to me. Whether it worked out or not, whether this was the perfect dream match that they thought it might be, I just felt like for them to go out of their way to set me up and try to helped me experience happiness, I just felt very loved by them. So I tried to affirm that to them, even when things didn't work out or it was a complete flop. And I think it depended on the relationship, how much debriefing I did with them after the date didn't work out.
Who was it? Mr. Connecticut, I think. One of them, he had 3 requirements for a wife: one that she'd be Christian, one that she, what was the other one, that she'd be working or something?
Active, yeah, active and loved her family. I think that
and loved her family. Mm-hmm. Like, wow.
Yeah, and he didn't really need to talk to me much after he figured out those things. So
check.
Sure.
Okay, you're good.
I wasn't sure if I passed or failed. That was the only question.
That's hilarious. And then he wasn't the one that quizzed you on the Bible, was he?
No, that was a different one. That was Uber Fundamentalist.
Oh, that's
guy.
right, Uber Fundamentalist
yes.
boy. That was ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, before we could even go out, he asked me my stance on baptism and end times and all kinds of theological nuances before he would even agree to meet with me. So,
and as you're answering this, are you thinking, I don't want to go out with you?
I know. And obviously there are certain fundamental things that are important, but some of those gray areas, I think we can all have a little room to agree to disagree. But
exactly. Wow, that's really kind of funny. So if you're going to talk to girls now, because now you're of the married variety, what would you tell your single friends? What would you tell single women today about blind dating or waiting? Like, what's your advice to them? Because it is hard to be single when all of your friends are married. Mm-hmm. It's hard to be a single when the world's in a couple. Mm-hmm. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah, and I would affirm that, just that it is a hard spot to be in. And I think in the church tends to do a really good job emphasizing marriage and families, and that's a really good thing. But sometimes it can feel alienating for people who aren't in that life stage. Like, how do they fit into the church? How do they fit into the body of Christ? And so I think I would just affirm that, yes, it is hard, and it's hard to wait and not know if this is going to end. How long will you be waiting? Is this just a season? And I would just encourage women that they are loved and God loves them unconditionally, and that isn't affected by their relationship status. They're worthy and valuable and loved. And I would also just encourage them to take a bold, brave step, and that might be different for each person. And for me, that was saying yes to a blind date or 8. And but sometimes just going outside of your comfort zone and being open to God doing something that you wouldn't expect. Sometimes really wonderful things can happen.
Did you see the show where the church picks dates for a member of their congregation? Did you ever see that show?
That sounds fascinating and horrifying, both.
Yeah, it was really good. It was like the pastor, the parent, and the congregation chose, I think, 4 or 5 men and or women, depending who they were choosing for, to set them all up on a date. And they would go out, and the pastor would talk to them, and the guy and the girls would go out. She'd go out with all of them, or maybe she'd go out in a group, and then she'd pick 1 or 2, and then eventually they would choose one to see who they really liked, and to see if they could do a better job, because they weren't finding people. Mm-hmm. And so this was one way I think that a church could, help their single, their single congregation by really getting involved and going, oh, I know that person so well, and she's so lovely, and, this would be a great match. Just have people, nominate dates for them.
Right. Well, and I think
would you have done that if they had done it for you?
Oh, boy, I don't know. I think it depends on who was on the selecting committee. If I trusted them, yes. If I wasn't sure, maybe not. But I do think that's something our society is losing a little bit. We are so individualized now, and there's not as much community, and it's easy for people to sit on their computer and have a relationship, through an online dating site or whatever, and this person doesn't really meet their friends and family, and so it's really hard to have those authentic relationships. So something like that, at least you're getting involvement from the people who love you and care about you.
How awkward was it sitting, meeting somebody? Did you find it was an interview every time? Was there ever not an interview?
There is that feeling of you're trying to present your best self and the other person's trying to present their best self, and you're trying to organically get to know them, but it can be kind of a forced situation. I'll tell you one silly thing, confession about myself is that I kept a little Post-it note in my purse full of like question ideas or conversation starters, just in case things got really quiet or awkward. Then I could kind of ruffle through my purse and figure out a question to ask or something to talk about. But it is. Any first date can be awkward, and it's kind of a vulnerable place to be in. But I also think there's something about in person that is really nice to get a better feel for what the person is like.
How safe did you feel going on these dates? Did you feel like they've already been vetted, the people know these people, or did you ever worry about it?
It did help knowing that they had a character reference from somebody I knew, and obviously that person doesn't know everything about them, but it did feel better to have that in place. And then I also made sure to meet for the first time in a public place, like a coffee shop, so that I felt more safe and somebody always knew where I was.
That's good. Yeah, I would think that that's a big concern for a lot of people, especially in today. And a coffee shop is really well. I mean, did anybody invite you to dinner, or was it always, I don't going to spend a lot of money, we'll just have a quick coffee and, 15, 20 minutes we can go? Like, what was the longest date that you had?
Let's see. There were a couple that went straight to dinner. Most of them were coffee, though, because it is less of a commitment, and you don't have to worry about getting spinach stuck between your teeth or something on the first date. But
no spinach dip.
I think it depended on how confident the guy was about if this was going somewhere or not, depending on how much he wanted to spend.
Oh, that's so funny. You do have a wonderful sense of humor, and I think that it sounded like that the guys in the book weren't getting you. Do you find that a lot of people do get you?
I think that is definitely one of the signs of if somebody will click with each other is if you find the same things funny and you get each other's sense of humor. That was something that was important to me, and there were some of those awkward dates where I would say something that I thought was funny and they would not laugh, or I would say something that wasn't funny and then they would laugh. So when I met Daniel, there were many things that attracted me to him, but his sense of humor is one of them.
Oh, great. Okay, we're going to commercial break. We will be right back with Stephanie, and Marcia Tulloch will be joining us, and I want you all to stick around because there's a big surprise coming.
The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors. All quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Whether you are a man, woman, boy, or girl, lifting weights is an important component to your exercise program. Livestrong says that challenging your body with different exercises and routines helps keep your workout interesting and effective. Make sure that when you're lifting weights, you are working to fatigue or failure to get the most benefits. When lifting weights, reaching failure means that you could not possibly do one more rep. Your muscle has failed. Fatigue means you can barely do one or two more repetitions and keep your good form. If your workout is too easy and you're not reaching failure or fatigue, it's time to lift heavier weights. Be aware that your form is vital, and reaching fatigue or failure is much more important than hitting a certain number of repetitions. I'm Annette Hammond. Like us on Facebook at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
and you're listening to Frankie Sense and More. I'm your host, Frankie Picasso, and we are back. We still have Stephanie Rische with us, and we have Marcia Tulloch has just joined us. And Marcia is a Canadian-Jamaican entrepreneur who, along with her partner, Delroy, operate a mobile RV repair company. But that's not all that they do, because they are the founders of the Jardine Graham Foundation, named after Delroy's sister, Jardine, who succumbed to leukemia in her 35th year at the Maypen Hospital in Jamaica. Now, Marcia's on a mission to spread the word about blood cancers, especially leukemia, and the need for stem cell bone marrow and blood donations, especially in the Caribbean community. She was born in Jamaica. She was the last of 10 children born to her parents, and she migrated to Canada at 13 years of age. She later met and married the father of her 3 children, who sadly died of lymphoma in 2001, leaving her to be a single parent to children who were 10, 8, and 5. So now she's with Delroy. She's the co-founder of the Jardine Graham Foundation, as I mentioned. And let's say hello to Marcia. Marcia, hi.
Hi, Frankie. Hello, everybody.
So glad to have you here. You are on a mission, and I mentioned that you want to talk about stem cell and bone marrow, especially with the Caribbean community. Why is that? Why is that so important to you?
Because there's a lack of donors. There's less than 1% in the registry right now. And recently, we had a young man, Davy Rochester, a father of 2 little girls, 3 and 1. He was just 29 years old, an engineer, and in 4 months after being diagnosed, he passed because there was nobody in the registry, couldn't find a donor. And the type of leukemia, the only cure is a stem cell donor. And I think the main reason why we don't have more people getting tested, they're scared about what it is. They think it's the first question they'll ask you is, what if I'm a match? So they think in their head it's going to be a surgery. They're thinking they're going to cut and go into their bones, stuff like that. But stem cell donorship, you just got to give some blood from your arm. And so the fear and the stigma and the lack of education is causing a lot of deaths. Right now, there's a little boy in BC, British Columbia, who needs a stem cell donor. He's around 5 years old, and his father is from the Caribbean descent. He's of Caribbean descent. And so these are the issues we're facing, unnecessary death in the community.
So it would have to be somebody from African descent, from the Caribbean, to be a match.
Yes, and it doesn't matter if you're first, second, or third, if you're mixed, it doesn't really matter. So we just need to get the word out and get people to just get involved. Getting tested is really simple. It's just a Q-tip swab in the cheek. And they test you, and then if you're a match, they'll just take some blood from your arm for the stem cell. And that simple procedure can save somebody's life.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that your sister-in-law, Jardine, when she passed away in Jamaica in the hospital there at the Maypen Hospital, that they didn't have very many resources there.
No, they don't. Actually, that's one of the hospitals that's rated, got a very bad rating in Jamaica right now. So it needs a lot of help. Right now they need equipment, simple equipment. Right now I'm looking at a list that the doctor had sent me. They need binocular microscope with the lenses. Laboratory benchtop centrifuge, hematocrit centrifuge, and urinalysis machines. And these are equipment.
Basic equipment.
Basic, right.
Yeah.
And some of these equipment that they're using Band-Aid to keep them together. So we want to do something. We went and we visited the nursery, and it's so hot in there, not even AC. So we're trying to raise funds to extend the nursery and just get some equipment in there and just make it just a small space. And, you know, if you see the picture, you're not allowed to take pictures inside. But if you could look even at the front of the hospital, the way it is compared to the hospitals here, you know, your heart goes out. Basic things like cold water, like ice. Those things, trying
they don't
to
have
get,
ice.
So I remember go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you about the pediatric oncology unit there. Like to put AC in, how much would that cost? Do you know? Have any idea?
That's the thing we're trying to work with them now, and that's another thing. Sometimes you try to go by email. You don't get to them as quickly. So right now, I spoke to the doctor yesterday, actually called him. So they're going to get a list, and we're going to go ahead and get an architect now to start drawing up plans so we could get a price on some of these things, what it will cost. So, well,
thank goodness that you're looking after this for everybody. I think that's wonderful that you're doing this. In the community, the percentage of people who get leukemia or children who are going to get leukemia or bloodborne diseases in your community, what percentage is that compared to the rest? Do you know?
It's basically, I don't have the percentage, but I know for the leukemia, the type of leukemia that this young man Davy passed with the other day and that Jardine succumbed to, they're saying it's a virus and it could lay dormant in the body. It can be transferred from parent to child. And so, and it takes their lives fairly quickly. Davy, within 4 months, he was dead.
Wow.
And this type of leukemia, it's certainly on the rise.
Like, do they know that they're sick? Marcia, do they know that they're sick and they just wait until the last minute to go to the hospital? Or is it just a really fast killing virus?
Well, they know they're sick, but not to the extent, because the symptoms are usually, like with Davey, he just had his lymph nodes were swollen, and at the urge of his wife, he went to check out. With Jardine, they thought it was her heart, and as I said, because of the lack of equipment for proper testing.
Right.
So first, their pain, they thought she needed breast reduction. Then they thought it was her heart. And so by the time, they give medication for this and the person should go back. But the disease is already advancing. And as I said, with males, the male population, I think they have a higher incidence of leukemia. But with men and young man, like a young man that's 29, if he feels a little bit sick, he's not going to run off to the doctor, most cases. So by the time they're diagnosed, they have little time.
So what most important to you, to have people come and donate blood, to get some money so that you can give it to the hospital? Like, what's the most important? I mean, it's all important, but what would you like
It's
most?
all important, but it's all important. It's hard to choose, because looking at the state of the hospital in Jamaica, that's one of my dreams, is to just see improvement, changes. I can imagine like the loss of lives there. And also here, like when you hear stories of, there's over 1,000 people in Canada waiting for donors for stem cells. And so when you think of all of that, it's like you want to do it all.
Right.
But I really do would like to reach out and help in Jamaica, especially with the little children, give them a chance of life.
Sure. So it sounds like you need some volunteers, because
yes,
you need volunteers, and you need cross-cultural volunteers.
We need volunteers. We need money. So, we need it all.
So what is your plan to raise money? What are you doing? Do you have any events coming up?
We had one event. We just came out of an event. We do a yearly event around Jordan's birthday. Her birthday is March 20th.
Okay.
So we did one March 18th here in Toronto. The response could have been better. It's a lot of work. And so, but by the time you take care of the expenses, sometimes, you don't make as much as you would like. But as next year and the following year, as more people know about us, we'll be able to come out, support us, donate, because you could go to our website, tggf.ca. It's the Jardine Graham Foundation.org, but I've shortened it because it's such a mouthful. So tggf.ca, where you could donate, and you could go we're at the Royal Bank too, the RBC.
Okay.
And we have our account, I think it's 100. I have the information here. So any RBC branch, 100-5669. That's 100-5669.
Okay.
And as I said, you could go to our website and also donate. And if anybody have any skills in fundraising or even event planning, because we could do other events.
Sure.
Besides the annual event. Anybody have any ideas? We're welcome. My number is 647-971-6656. And all the information is on the website, tggf.ca.
Perfect, Marsha. Thank you so much. We're about to go to commercial break in a minute, but I just wanted to leave you with one. I don't know if you've reached out to Caravana, but maybe you could have a booth at Caravana and register people, and that you can call later to give blood.
That's what we're planning, because we had a swab event at our latest event. And I'm
going to stop you because we're going to go to a commercial.
Okay.
Frankie Sense and More. We'll be right back after we pay the bills.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 10, 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Gerasi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward, with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Eating meatless meals is gaining more and more popularity. You don't have to vow to be a vegetarian either. Vegetarians eat only plant-based foods, and they generally eat fewer calories and less fat. They weigh less and have lower cholesterol levels than do non-vegetarians. They follow a diet which emphasizes fruits and vegetables, grains, beans and legumes, and nuts. It's rich in fiber, vitamins, and other nutrients. If being a vegetarian is not for you, do what I do and incorporate vegetarian habits into your life. Every week, I serve 2 to 3 meatless meals at home to my family. A National Cancer Institute study found that those who ate 4 ounces of red meat or more daily were 30% more likely to die of any cause over 10 years than those who consumed less. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
Well, we're back to Frankie Sense and More, and I told you we had a big surprise. Who's here? It was the last blind date himself. Daniel is here. Stephanie's husband is with us. Welcome, Daniel.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Why don't you, I'd like to hear from your perspective.
All right.
That last date when you first met Stephanie. You guys were on bikes. I think it was raining, Stephanie. Your makeup was running. Your hair was...
That's right. I don't know if Stephanie's had a chance to already talk about it, but...
No, we haven't talked about it.
But that first date, as Stephanie likes to say, when we met on the path, and we just had a chance to start talking and connecting, and I think right away from when we started talking, it was comfortable. We found a lot of similarities in our families and our backgrounds, and it just made the conversation flow really easily and comfortably. And then even as Stephanie likes to say, sure, the conversation was comfortable, but there was also still those elements of the just getting to know someone, or maybe the side of not sure how it's going to go. So
a little anticipation and excitement.
Yeah. Is that what you'd say too, Stephanie?
Yeah, that was a great recap. I would have added something about how handsome you were too, but other than that, it's
well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Daniel. I mean, Stephanie is gorgeous. No two ways about that.
I think so too.
So why was this gorgeous woman still available, in your opinion?
I'm not sure. The only thing that I can hang on to is that Stephanie and I, the timing for us to meet up was coming, and the plan for us to be together was still being developed.
There you go. I think we said it at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that was a good way to put it.
Good for you. And what is it that you love about her so much?
Stephanie's wonderful and amazing. There's so many things about her. One thing that I love about Stephanie is how supportive she is of everyone around her. She's very encouraging in everything that she does. I see that in the work that she does at Tyndale Publishing House and the authors that she works with, and then also I benefit from it in many ways as well. That side of it.
I'll take you off the hook. Stephanie, what do you love about Daniel?
Oh, boy. Well, as you have heard from all the other blind date experiences, I could tell right away that there was something special about Daniel. He works with people who have disabilities, and right away that attracted me, that he really cares about the underdog and people who maybe are overlooked by the rest of the world, and he's just always looking to include people who are usually left out, and immediately that attracted me, and he just is a very good man.
Wow, I love that.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun to hear this from each other?
I know. I'm glad this is being recorded so I can play it back.
Well, I think something that was also special, and I kind of just mentioned it earlier, but just how we connected and how many similarities that we had in common. It's even funny to think about how we grew up with the same stories that I would tell about my family were almost parallel to stories that Stephanie's would tell about her childhood too. So that connection was great.
That's true.
And what about this 4 jars of peanut butter? You're a peanut butter monster?
I do love peanut butter. I think Stephanie must have mentioned that, yes. I love peanut butter. I think that was one of the similarities that even came up when we were being set up as a blind date. One thing that we might have in common.
I think it was.
You each sit there on the sofa at night with your own jar and just dip?
We do share. Yeah.
Oh, you share. I thought peanut butter might be the one thing that you don't share.
That's how I know it was true love. He would share his peanut butter with me.
That's awesome. And so, Daniel, how many blind dates did you go on?
I hadn't thought of that. I think I maybe have been on maybe 1 or 2 before Stephanie. So not as many. Yeah.
Did you have a clear idea of who you were looking for? Did you know, like, had you ever written it down or go, I'm looking for these qualities, I'm looking for this in a woman, or did you think, well, I'll know when I find her?
I don't know if I ever formally wrote down or, have it written down anywhere, but I do know that I had certain characteristics that I was looking for, and among those, a number of those are the qualities that Stephanie has. Yeah, her amazing faith is one of the big ones that I was immediately attracted to. So, yeah.
And how did you choose a church to go to?
Well, I can answer this one. We had to make some changes when we got married because when we got married, Daniel moved into my townhouse that I had bought, and so the church he had been going to and been in the band in was too far away from where we lived. So he ended up sacrificing a lot to move into my place and go to the church I'd been going to. But it's been great because now he plays in the church band at our church together. And so it's been great to see him get plugged into that church. And now it's our church, not just my church.
What do you play?
I play in the worship band. I mostly play bass.
Nice.
Yeah.
They're always the real goofy guys.
He's up there dancing, and
that might fit me in. That description might fit me in some ways. Yes, I think so.
This is coming from a drummer, okay? The groove section has to stick together, but yeah, you guys are always a little bit off center. I find bass player. It's interesting. And Stephanie, do you sing? Do you do anything?
I enjoy singing, but nobody wants to hear me sing. So I love it when Daniel practices at home because then I can just belt it out at home when no one's listening, and then he goes and nobody gives me a microphone, and that's better that way.
Just good audience participation.
That's right.
Nice. So how long have you guys been married now?
4.5 years.
Yeah, 4.5 years.
Wow. Yeah. Time flew.
I know, it has.
That's awesome. I just love it. And I told you at the start of the show that Stephanie was picking up rocks. She was, and Stephanie said that she was putting names on these rocks. But there's and then you realized that there was a rock for Daniel.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
The rock, I think Stephanie and I, as you might already know, met on the bike path. And our plan was to go on a bike ride, and the spot that we had picked out to meet is kind of at a fork in the bike path, kind of where two paths meet each other. And there's a rather large rock boulder, I think you could even call it. And I think, I don't even know, I might have even been leaning or sitting on top of the rock when Stephanie came down. It has a little memorial plaque for maybe some individuals that used the path or enjoyed that area specifically, but it was right there at the spot where we had set up to meet.
Yep.
And I guess it fit right into the collecting of rocks that Stephanie had been doing.
That's right.
Did you get your Sharpie out and sign your name?
No, we haven't done any graffiti yet. But every time we walk by, we talk about, it's our rock.
That's our rock. Isn't that nice? It's like a real anchor for your relationship.
Yeah. Well, and that spot is really fun, but it's also really fun, the spot where one of the spots that we went to on our first blind date is a park. It's near the Fox River.
Where do you live? What town?
We're in Batavia, Illinois.
Oh, in Illinois. Okay.
Yeah, but this park where we went to on our first date, and it also is the park that we got engaged at, is now very close to the house that we purchased over the summer. So it's really fun. It's close. We see it regularly and get to go to that park. So, yeah.
Who wants to tell me the engagement story?
Oh, I can jump in. Daniel did such a good job. He did kind of the highlights of our whole dating life together, and he took me to all the different spots where we had special memories. And I'm a super sentimental person, so to go through our whole time of knowing each other and remembering each spot, it was so special. And then he got down on one knee in the park where we went on our first date, and that's where he asked me to marry him.
Were there people around at the time?
No, there weren't. And I'll tell you one more special thing about the engagement story. It had snowed a lot. It was February, and it was one of those winters where we had like 3 feet of snow. And so he got up super early in the morning and shoveled off the whole basketball court because one of our dates was playing basketball outside, and it was that really heavy snow. And so he'd gotten up super early just to clear off the basketball court for me.
So you reenacted almost every date that you'd had that day?
The highlights, yeah.
The highlights, and then it culminated in him asking you to marry him.
Yep. I said yes.
Did you have any idea it was going to happen?
Eventually. We had talked about, when he first asked, I was just like blubbering and crying, and then I realized, I need to actually give him an answer. It seemed obvious, but... So.
I assumed the answer was yes, but it was also nice to hear you say it.
It was. And then how long was the engagement?
6 months, I think. It was. Okay. We didn't have a very fancy wedding, and we just knew we wanted to be together, so we didn't have a lot of plans. We just had our 2 immediate families and a couple friends there.
Okay. Well, you don't need a lot of people when you just want to get married.
That's right. That's right.
And it sounds like it all worked out for you very well.
Well, it's suddenly things that you've been waiting for a long time. When you're in hindsight and can look back, you can see that God had a plan all along that was better than what I had. But when you're in the middle of the waiting, it's hard to see that.
So you were fasting and learning about yourself and before. Is there anything that you do now as a couple to continue to give thanks to God for meeting?
One thing go ahead, Daniel.
I
got 1 minute.
It's kind of what we were just talking about the having the spots and the tracing back of some of those spots. Is one way that we kind of honor that.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say, Stephanie?
Oh, and just in the morning, sometimes we'll say something we're thankful for, and it's not a long, drawn-out thing, but just to keep us grounded on gratitude for all that God has done for us.
Nice. Well, thank you both so much for coming to the show. You've been listening to Frankie Sense and More. This is Stephanie Rische, is my guest, and her husband Daniel. Her book was called I Was Blind, Dating, But Now I See. And we had Marcia Tulloch of the Jardine Graham Foundation, who is looking for Caribbean blood donors. So please reach out and give what you have to give inside of you. That would be great. Thank you both again so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot, Frankie.
For producing the show, and we will see you next week again. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Siege on the beat. Hit Rash Production.
Shina you.